Good evening, those of you who are online and those who are in person. Got a small crowd tonight, but we are going to begin our study on Numbers tonight. Dave is printing out tests for people who are here. If you're online, I have a test prepared for you. Dave's going to email it to you. I'd like to get it back next Tuesday. Only question I have about the test is I made it a closed book test. I'm not sure how well it's going to work with online crowd.
You want a mentor, or you want a proctor, or you want an honor system?
I'm sorry, say that again.
You want a proctor or an honor system?
Honor system. Anyways, let's just go with the original plan. Honor system, closed book, and you can filter them in through the week when you're done with them, and we will grade them as they go and discuss it, or finish it up next week. But anyways, when Dave gets those to you, feel free to take it any time. And again, for those of you who are auditing the class, why don't you go ahead and take a copy just to see how well you do. No one has to know if you're shy about things like that. Take a copy home with you. All right, the fourth in our series of 5 books in the Law of Moses. Of course, study them as individuals, but they're also a collection. And you find yourself jumping back and forth between them to fill in various gaps. But by way of introduction to the book of Numbers, turn to Deuteronomy. Just real quick. I'm going to be in there that long. Deuteronomy 1:1. These are the words which Moses spoke to all Israel on this side of the Jordan in the wilderness, in the plain opposite Suf, Suf or Arabah. I've gotten the margin between Paran, Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, and Dizahab. It is 11 days' journey from Horeb by way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Those 11 days, what is being pointed out there with 11 days? I'm sure you number scholars know how long Israel wandered in the wilderness. How long they wandered? 40 years. Should have taken 11 days. Pretty sad that this generation that comes out of Egypt would be proved so unfaithful that they would be sentenced to wander in the wilderness for 40 years for something that should have taken 11 days. Tragic indeed. Hebrew writer is all over the first generation, particularly in chapter 3, comes to mind about generation died in the wilderness. And by the way, I think it's Hebrews 3:19. First generation died in the wilderness of unbelief. You know why that gets my attention? Israel's camped on top of each other. Pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire is hovering over the tabernacle. Do you think if you took a survey like we do in modern times and went tent by tent and said, do you still believe in the existence of Jehovah? Anybody would say no. Think there's any atheists in the camp in that sense? No. And yet the Hebrew writer, writing by inspiration, said they died in the wilderness of unbelief. Apparently the head knowledge that there is a God just is not sufficient. Faith without works is dead. Why call me Lord, Lord? Do not the things I say. Luke 6:46. They died in the wilderness of unbelief. Anybody want to guess what the ground zero chapters are, as opposed to two chapters. It's kind of the crucial turning point in the book of Numbers. Yeah. I would say chapter 13 and 14. What's going on in 13 and 14? We were, but we're back in Numbers now. What we were pointing out in Deuteronomy, Joe, is verse 2 lets us know that the Jews, when they come out of Egypt, at the foot of Mount Sinai, had they been faithful, it would have only taken them 11 days to get to the promised land. Instead, they died, or they wandered for 40 years. So that's the tragedy of their unfaithfulness to God, culminated in chapters 13 and 14, which of course tell the story of the 12 spies that went in to spy out the land. And of course, from my way of looking at things, the key verse there is chapter 13 and verse 2. I see people taking notes. Chapter 13 and verse 2. Go in, and I'm paraphrasing, but go in and spy out the land which I am giving you. So I'm paraphrasing, but let me go ahead and just read it. I'm right there. Send men to spy out the land. This is chapter 13, verse 2. Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the children of Israel. From each tribe of their fathers you shall send a man, every one a leader among them. What's the phrase that jumps out at me in that verse? Anyone want to guess? Just one verse. One phrase, I should say.
I would say leader.
That's a good one. The words that jump out at me is, I am giving to the children of Israel. Why does that jump out at me?
Okay.
Because how in the world could 10 spies come back with a negative report? God's already told you I'm giving it to you. All you got to do is have faith in those words right there. And 12 spies should have come back and said, let's go. Time to take the land. And of course, test question, we know only 2 of the 12 spies came back with a positive report. They were who? And Caleb and Joshua. So chapters 13 and 14. 13 is them going in, spying out the land, and raising doubts that they could be taken, ready to stone Joshua and Caleb, Moses. But anyways, because of that, they're sentenced. By the way, why were they sentenced to wander for 40 years? Maybe I didn't ask that question correctly. Why was 40 years chosen, particularly? Numbers tells you, but we hadn't got there yet. A year for a day. You spied out the land 40 days. You will serve your sentence will be a year for a day. Now, the reason why I particularly point that out is because that might be a pattern that's helpful when you get to chapters, Daniel chapter 9, 470 years, or 70 weeks, I should say. But anyways, certainly in the book of Numbers, as we will see, that's the exact reason for their wandering 40 years. And by the way, symbolically, why 440? To the Jews, 4 represented the world pretty well. And it actually does represent the world pretty well. North, south, east, west. All the points on the compass tends to be a number of world that the Jews symbolized with the world. So 40 days they go in and spy out the land, and 40 years they shall wander in the wilderness. How long did it take to write the book of Leviticus? Anybody remember? Book of Leviticus. Took a month. Now, how do we know that? Because when we start reading Numbers, which we are going to assume was written by Moses, and not worry about it much further than that. Moses wrote all 5 books, and once again, go to the New Testament and see how many times the law is attributed to Moses. time and time again. So Moses, writing this book in the wilderness shortly after, or at least began shortly after, the book of Leviticus says, "Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of meeting on the first day of the second month in the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt." So by then, the book of Leviticus, hey, Cephas, how you doing, brother? Good. We just got started. You haven't missed much. What is the end of the book of Exodus? Give me 1 second. What verse is that in Exodus? Right at the end. There it is. Exodus 40 and verse 17. And it came to pass in the first month of the second year, and the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up. So that happened in the second year, and the first month. Make sure, first, see that's Exodus 40, verse 17. I had tabernacle up and running, or up, I should say, in the first month of the second year on the first day of the month. Go to the book of Numbers, and God spoke to Moses in the tabernacle of meeting on the first day of the second month in the second year. So it's only a month later. Point being, the book of Leviticus has already been written by then. So at the foot of Mount Sinai, as soon as they erected the tabernacle, end of the book of Exodus, tabernacle's up, book of Leviticus. Here come the sacrifices written particularly to the priests so that we can start functioning at the tabernacle. So book of Leviticus written for over a period of 30 days right there, so you can get started. And now in the book of Numbers, now we're ready to get started. One of the things I love about the way the book of Exodus starts, I link it to Genesis chapter 1. Not just chapter 1 of Numbers, but the first few chapters, if you will. But I link it up with Genesis chapter 1. I love the beauty of Genesis chapter 1 and the way creation is laid out. Look at Genesis 1 for a second. I'll show you what I mean. God creates the heaven and the earth. The earth was darkness on the face of the deep. Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So after the creation of the heavens and the earth, if I was to ask you on a test, what was the first thing God created? Your answer would be, we're not studying Genesis. We're studying Numbers. Now, the reason why I point that out, because I had a thought one day. Why do you suppose God started with light? Because without light, the physical universe is impossible to see. Spiritually speaking, without Christ's light, we are just as blind. And also, I think light is the perfect representation of God, in the sense God is light. And so starts with light. You got to light it up before you can move further. So anyways, verse 4, God saw the light, it was good, divided. Notice that, divided the light from the darkness. That's what happened on the first day. And then verse 6, God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." See all this division? Thus God made the firmament, divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And that's the second day. Then God said, "Let the waters under heaven be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. So he divided the waters from the dry land. See all this division? And then, of course, that's day 3. And then on day 4, he creates the luminaries. And by the way, I think verse 14 is pretty important as long as we're here. Again, it's not quite about the book of, well, it is indirectly related to Numbers. But look at verse 14, Genesis 1. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years. What's one of the purposes of the luminaries? Obviously, life on earth is impossible without the sun. But what's another purpose of the luminaries? They are timekeeping devices. Well, of course, skeptics are all over the fact that the sun wasn't created till day 4, which begs the question for the skeptic, how long were days 1, 2, and 3 if the sun wasn't created till day 4? But here's what I want you to notice, and this is why this verse is so important to me. First of all, I attach a lot of meaning to the phrase the evening and the morning. Now, why? Because what do we know the evening and the morning is implying? The earth is revolving on its axis. What's days 1, 2, and 3 called? They're called the day, and we know the earth is revolving on its axis. The question, if eons of time are involved in days 1, 2, and 3, at what rate is the earth rotating? It's almost would be immeasurable. It would be so slow. You want to tell me on day 4, suddenly the evening and the morning becomes a 24-hour day like we've all known all of our lives? It just got jacked up on day 4 for no apparent reason? Where's that in the text? The only way you would come to that conclusion is if you already believe days 1, 2, and 3 can't be literal days. And then you start looking for a way to justify that, which is what a lot of people who believe in theistic evolution, that's what they do. But I also like the fact of this. What is one of the purposes of the sun and the moon and the stars? To divide the day from the night and let them be for signs and seasons. But this is what I like. And for days and years. Brethren, if days 1, 2, and 3 aren't a day, that verse has no meaning. You just start defining day in any verse you want. I mean anything. No. The earth is rotating day 1, 2, and 3. Day 4, God puts the luminaries out there so that we can measure at what rate it is rotating. He didn't suddenly change it on day 4. That's how it was rotating. But notice, back to our book of Numbers, okay, he's divided. Now we're dividing, again, the day from the night. And then, of course, now guess what we do after that? Let's start putting things on this earth that we have made. What verse am I looking for? Verse 21. So God created the living creatures. Every living thing that moves. Oh, by the way, I already skipped over. God created the fruit, or I mean not fruit, but grass and herb that yields its seed, trees, plant life, I should say, on verse day 3 too. So notice he's putting things on the earth now, putting animals or fish in the sea. And then, of course, day 5, he creates the, where's it at? Evening and the morning were the 5th day. So he created the sea creatures on the 5th day. And then, of course, on the 6th day, created man and beast together. But what I want you to notice is notice the organization. He divides light from darkness. He divides the waters above from the waters below. He divides the land from the earth. And then he puts things on in a grand plan, or his crowning achievement as man. What are we noticing here? Notice the organization. God's not the author of confusion. You get to the book of Numbers, and by the way, how many people went down into Egypt? Does anybody remember? 70. And I forget the exact verse, but the end of the book of Genesis, 70 souls went down into Egypt, or Israel, went to Egypt, Israel. But Israel was essentially the 12 sons of Jacob and their families that went down into Egypt. You turn to Exodus chapter 1, how many Jews are there now? There's 70 at the end of Genesis, but how many are there at the beginning of Exodus? And the answer is about 2.5 million. Now, how do we know that? Because of what we're about to study right here. Find out how many fighting soldier or men of war there are between the ages of 20 and up, 20 and 50. No, that's the priesthood. But anyways, we get 603,550, I believe, men who are ready to go to war. Well, how do we jump from 603,000 to 2.5 million? Men, women, and children. These men are married. They have children. Foreigners also came in with Egypt, came out of Egypt with the nation. So if there are 600,000 fighting men, we can do the math as far as, can't tell you with any exactness, but obviously there's about 2.5 million to 3 million Jews in the wilderness. And my point being, you got to move those people around. These people got to get organized. One of the things that's incredible in Numbers chapter 1, particularly as we get started, is God's organization. He's moving. All you got to do is follow him and pay attention to him. He can move 3 million. I like to use 3 million just because it's easier than 2.5 million, but somewhere between there. But God can move 3 million people around. He can move them around efficiently. Anybody ever been into a congregation that worships at 10:30 or maybe 10:37? We'll get around to it. We're easing our way up there. Everything is disorganized. Everything is disheveled. Guys are called on at the last minute. All kinds of disorganization. Yeah, we had a little bit of that. Thanks to COVID, we came back a little sloppy. And so we had a men's meeting and said, this got to stop. And one of the things I did was preach a lesson right here on how organized God is. If God could move 3 million people around in an organized fashion, you would think we could move 40 around in an organized fashion, look like we know what we're doing. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes is lacking, at least where I've been. But sometimes it's lacking is just if you're a visitor, just a general confidence that we know exactly what we're doing. We're organized. We move fluently, if you will. We know how to worship God, and we do it efficiently. All things are done decently and in order, that kind of thing. But anyways, I think the book of Numbers in chapter 1 and next few chapters helps us to see that we worship a systematic, organized God. And by the way, that's very helpful. Guess if you're studying to be a preacher, one of the first things I learned at school is, you want to preach? Yeah. Where's your outline? Well, I've never spoke before. I'm like, what's an outline? What does that mean? Well, organize your thoughts, man. What kind of points you want to make? Give me, first of all, what'd you come here to say? Okay. You got any verses that you're going to work off of? Okay. What points you want to make based on the text that's in there? Now, once you got some main points, put some sub-points in there. Organization. God is organized, and we should be organized as well. You can see a lot of in the apostles and also the prophets as well, but you can see systematic building on knowledge in the apostles' sermons. But anyways, Israel's wandering in the wilderness. We call the book Numbers for what reason?
Census.
Yeah, there's 2 census in the book. One here or one we're getting ready to reveal, and then in chapter 26. Why are there 2 census? Second generation. These guys are dying. In fact, there's 2 of a lot of things in the book of Numbers. 2 generations, 2 numberings, 2 sets of instructions, because you have 2 generations. Same reason why I hammer home to the students 10 Commandments. Why do you have it twice? You got the book of Exodus, chapter 20, Lo and behold, there it is again in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Why? Because at the foot of Mount Sinai, the law was given to the first generation that's about to die in the wilderness right here. God gave it again in the book of Deuteronomy to the second generation. So that's why it appears twice. And of course, I almost can't talk about the Ten Commandments without mentioning this. Always notice too that the reason for the Sabbath in the book of Exodus is different than the reason for the Sabbath in the book of Deuteronomy. What's the reason, without looking up, what's the reason for the Sabbath in the book of Exodus? 6 days God created the heavens and the earth. On the seventh day he rested. You do the same thing, hallow it and sanctify it. You get to the book of Deuteronomy, still with a mighty hand. And you need to remember that. Why is that significant with the world we live in? Because some people think we ought to be worshiping on Saturday, or the Sabbath is still binding. And so it is interesting that the book of Deuteronomy points out particularly that the Sabbath was only given to Israel. It never applied to anyone else. It's been nailed to the cross. Now, the Seventh-day Adventists have a way around that, but we're not going to worry about that tonight. But the point is, what's the reason for the Sabbath in the book of Deuteronomy? It's because Egypt, you came out of slavery, out of Egyptian slavery. Well, that doesn't apply to anyone except the Jews. So the Sabbath was only given to the Jews. God did sanctify it, or I should say he rested in the book of Genesis, but he never bound it on anyone. So the Sabbath was only bound on the nation of Israel for about 1,400 years, and after that it was nailed to the cross. And now we worship on the Lord's Day. Joe, did you have your hand up?
No.
Oh, okay. Thought you had your hand up, yeah. So anyways, the book is called Numbers because of the two census. The Jews actually refer to it in Jewish writings as in the wilderness. But I prefer the book of Numbers. But anyways, they certainly are in the wilderness and they certainly are wandering. So, book of Numbers, history of the Jews in the wilderness, most of it miserable, but at the end of the book, most of it miserable, but at the end of the book, the second generation is getting ready. And then in the book of Deuteronomy, of course, Moses speaks to the second generation. But let's get started. Book of Numbers. Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of meeting on the first day of the second month in the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, take a census of all the congregation of the children of Israel by their families, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and above, all who are able to go to war in Israel. Excuse me. You and Aaron shall number them by their armies. And with you there shall be a man from every tribe, each from the head of his father's house. These are the names of the men who shall stand with you. Reuben, Eliezer, Eliezer, the son of Shadur, from Simeon, I love to give these scripture readings to guys like 2 minutes before service. Hey, by the way, read Numbers chapter 1. Watch them hack it out. That's exactly the opposite of what I was telling you. And now that I had my little fun and my silly joke, in all seriousness, if you got a scripture reading that you know is kind of difficult, it's got names in it, most people don't know how to pronounce. You ask somebody to read it, give them a little bit of time, let them know, hey, brace yourself, man, I got some names in here. And if they're struggling with the names, you might want to help them out. You can see, I don't have them all down, but anyways, I was going to read those names, but I don't think I will. Just notice that there is a man from each tribe. Reuben, Simeon, verse 6. Judah, verse 7. One from Issachar, verse 9. Zebulun. And then in verse 10, the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. And once again, remember, Joseph never gets any territory, even though he's the hero of the book of Genesis. He actually does not get territory when they get into the land. His two sons do, Ephraim and Manasseh. Verse 11, Benjamin. Verse 12, Dan. Verse 13, Asher. Verse 14, Gad. And verse 15, Naphtali. These were chosen from, verse 16, these were chosen from the congregation, leaders of their fathers, tribes of the head of the divisions of Israel. Once again, notice that organization. Remember in the book of Exodus when Moses was trying to judge Israel from morning to night? Anybody remember that story? No? Yeah. You were caught up in something. I was looking right at you. But Jethro came and watched Moses. Told him, you're wearing yourself out, man. You need to appoint judges for these matters. You need to judge the high matters. But things that are easier to solve, get good men, good wise men. They can help you. Well, it's kind of precursor to the deacons and elders of the Lord's church. We got more work than we can handle. Well, we need all kinds of help. And so get organized. And here we are in the wilderness getting organized. So we've got heads of each household. Verse 16. These were chosen from the congregations, leaders of the fathers' tribes, heads of the divisions of Israel. Then Moses and Aaron took these men who had been mentioned by name, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they recited their ancestry by families, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, from 20 years old and above, each one individually. You need no 23andMe in Jewish circles. They knew where they came from. They kept good records. And of course, that's one of the things I think you were pointing it out. One of the things about the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. How's a guy going to prove he's a priest from the tribe of Levi anymore? How can the Messiah prove he's from the tribe of Judah? When God destroyed Jerusalem in AD 70, he meant to wipe it out. So anyways, the rest of chapter 1 gives a breakdown of how many men of war there are in each tribe. Notice he starts in verse 20. Now the children of Reuben, Israel's oldest son, their genealogies by their families, by their father's house, according to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and above, all who are able to go to war. Those who were numbered of the tribe of Reuben were 46,500. Now, I specifically read verse 20 and 21 together because I want you to notice that formula. I did something with my Bible that's kind of helpful, and I'll pass the suggestion along to you. If you want, I'll give you an example of what I'm doing. In verse 20 and 21 we just read. But notice this. In verse 20, I have this. Now the children of Reuben, Israel's oldest son. I've got Reuben, Israel's oldest son, highlighted. And then I stopped highlighting until I got to verse 21. Those who were numbered of the tribe of Reuben were 46,500. Now, why I suppose I did that? Because at the drop of a hat, if I open up to Numbers chapter 1 and I look at verses 20 and 21, guess what words jump out at me? Reuben, Israel's oldest son. Reuben were 46,500. That's all I need to remember, because that formula that I just read, he uses for each tribe. So I highlighted all that so I could, it's kind of a shorthand, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. But anyways, let me do it one more time and then I'll skip ahead, so to speak. Verse 22. Okay, and by the way, who was the firstborn in Israel? Firstborn of Jacob's sons? Reuben. Says it right there, doesn't it? Yeah. Verse 20. Reuben, Israel's oldest son. Second child is Simeon. Verse 22. From the children of Simeon, their genealogies, by their families, by their father's house, of those who were numbered according to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and above, all who were able to go to war. That sounds just like what he said above. Verse 23, those who were numbered of the tribe of Simeon were 59,300. So now that I've done it with two sons, let me show you how I read it when I'm just reading it to myself. Verse 24, from the children of Gad, stop. Drop down to verse 25. Those who were numbered of the tribe of Gad were 45,600. Verse 26, from the children of Judah, stop. Drop down to verse 27. Those who were numbered of the tribe of Judah were 74,600. Verse 28, from the children of Issachar, stop. Drop down to verse 29. Those who were numbered of the tribes of Issachar were 54,400. Verse 30, from the tribe of Zebulun, stop. Drop down to verse 31. Those who were numbered of the tribe of Zebulun were 57,400. Verse 32, from the sons of Joseph, the children of Ephraim. Verse 33, those who were numbered of the tribe of Ephraim were 40,500. Joseph's other child, verse 34, from the children of Manasseh. Drop down to verse 35. Those who were numbered of the tribe of Manasseh were 32,200. Verse 36, from the tribe of Benjamin. Verse 37, those who were numbered of the tribe of Benjamin were 35,400. From the tribe of Dan, verse 38. From the tribe of Dan, verse 39, those who were numbered of the tribe of Dan were 62,700. From the children of Asher, their genealogies by their family. And by the way, who's Israel's Jacob's last born son? Which means they're not going in order, as you can see. Verse 40, from the children of Asher, drop down to 41, those who were numbered of the tribe of Asher, 41,500. From the children of Naphtali, verse 43, those who were numbered of the tribe of Naphtali were 53,400. These, verse 44, these are the ones who were numbered, whom Moses and Aaron numbered, with the leaders of Israel, 12 men, each one representing his father's house. So all who were numbered of the children of Israel by their father's houses, from 20 years old and above, all who were able to go to war. And here's the only number I want you to remember. You don't have to remember all those other numbers. I just read them one time so that you would see proportionally what it looked like. But here's the number I want you to remember. The first census is verse 46. All who were numbered were 603,550. So those are men who were ready to go to war. Verse 47, but the Levites were not numbered among them by their fathers' tribes, for the Lord had spoken to Moses, saying, only the tribe of the Levi you shall not number, nor take a census of them among the children of Israel, but you shall appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of testimony, over its furnishings, over all the things that belong to it. It shall carry the tabernacle. They shall carry the tabernacle, all its furnishings, and shall attend to it and camp around the tabernacle. And when the tabernacle is to go forward, the Levites shall take it down. And when the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall set it up. To the outsider who comes near shall be put to death. The children of Israel shall pitch their tents, everyone by his own camp, everyone by his own standard, according to their armies. But the Levites shall camp around the tabernacle of the testimony, that there may be no wrath on the congregation of the children of Israel. And the Levites shall keep charge of the tabernacle of testimony. Thus the children of Israel did, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So they did. So if you highlight what I read, you can read Numbers chapter 1 pretty quickly, because again, that same phrase is used for every family. And so I did that a while back, and I redid it again as I was preparing for this class. So it's nice and bright now. But anyways, that helps to read that chapter. But obviously, we got 603,550 men ready to go to war. Assuming they're married, have children, and foreigners included. We've got about 3 million people out here in the wilderness. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know some sort of interesting here.
Uh-huh.
Look at this listing of men. The youngest two of these men would have been Ephraim and Manasseh, and they actually had the smallest of the groups there. So that falls in line.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. It's good.
Those sons would have been the youngest two that had been, they were teenagers when their father they died, but they were accepted, but they may have been a few years behind Benjamin, who was, say, the youngest actual brother.
Mhm.
And so they had the smallest group. Reuben had a large group, and Dan and those others had large groups. They were older, more mature. So they would have had more children. They would have fathered children well before these boys probably got started.
Well, look at you, scholar. Nice observation. It never even dawned on me. That's a good observation. Yeah, Ephraim and Manasseh are younger because they are Joseph's, and Joseph is the 11th, which means his brothers are older than him. So it's even amplified a little bit more. But yeah, good observation. By the way, verse 52. We'll see this word in a few more times. According to their own standard. The end of verse 52. The children of Israel shall pitch their tents, everyone by his own camp, everyone according to his own standard. What do you think standard means? Every tribe had a standard. What do you suppose Judah's was? He's lying. We don't have a full list of all the tribes and what their standards were, but every tribe had a standard. You know, obviously the source of pride in a sense that the tribe had a standard and individual families had ensigns, but in a practical sense, you know, not only is it a sense of pride and loyalty, but it's also in a practical sense. Got a standard up there. Anybody gets confused, you can get back together quickly. You know, there's my standard over there. I don't know if it was ever necessary, but anyways, once again, we see organization here. And got a standard, easy to find. It's like being in an airport. Everything's right up there in large signs in front of you. It's hard to get lost in the airport. You might not make it to where you're going. It's so big, but it's hard to get lost. All right, so now we have a breakdown. Those are, that's the census of Israel's fighting men. But now, the tabernacle, when we set it down and rest, we are going to camp around the tabernacle. Notice in chapter 2, verse 1, we start on the east. The east tends to be very superior in the sense that that's where the rising of the sun comes from. Anybody remember when the tabernacle is, what direction it's facing? Anybody remember? Facing east to west. You progress westward as you move towards the most holy place. But anyways, the east side is highly significant. Notice they go in clockwise order. But you've got 12 tribes, so you've got 3 on each side. Chapter 2, verse 1. Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, every one of the children of Israel shall encamp by his own standard beside the emblems of his father's house. There you go, standard and emblems right there. They shall camp some distance from the tabernacle of meeting. On the east side, towards the rising of the sun, those of the standard of the forces of Judah shall camp according to their armies. And Nahshon, son of Amminadab, shall be the leader of the children of Judah. And his army was numbered at 74,600. Those who camp next to him shall be the tribe of Issachar, and Nethanel, the son of Zuar, shall be the leader of the children of Issachar. His army was numbered at 54,400. Then shall come the tribe of Zebulun, and Eliab, the son of Helon, shall be the leader of the children of Zebulun. And his army was numbered at 57,400. All who were numbered, according to their armies of the forces with Judah, 186,400. These shall break camp first. So they move from the east, and like I said, on the goes in a clockwise position. On the south side is Reuben. Verse 12. No, actually, verse 11. His army was numbered at 46,500. Those who camp next to him shall be the tribe of Simeon. His army, verse 13, is numbered at 59,300. Then shall come the tribe of Gad, and the leaders of children of Gad shall be Eliasaph, the son of Ruel, and his army was numbered at 45,650. All who were numbered according to the armies of the forces with Reuben, 151,450. They shall be second to break camp. What does that mean? It's time to move. The people on the east go first. People on the south follow right in behind them. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, organization. We're moving 3 million people, folks. Better be organized. And so starts with the east, and the Jews understand that. They know how to move in an organized fashion. Those on the east side go first. Those on the south side go second. And so you might naturally think those on the west side would go next, right? Nope. Look at verse 17. Then the tabernacle of meeting shall move out with the camp of the Levites in the middle of the camp. As they camp, so they shall move out, everyone in his place by their standards. So the Levites and the tabernacle and all of its furnishings, they're right in the middle. So there's 6 tribes in front of them, 6 tribes behind them. Now we go to the west side, verse 18. On the west side shall be the standard of the forces of Ephraim, according to their armies, and the leader of the children of Ephraim shall be Elishama, son of Minahud. His army is 40,500. Next to him shall be Manasseh. And the leader of the children of Manasseh shall be Gamaliel, the son of Pedazur. And I read that one simply because I wanted to read the name Gamaliel. Where did we read that name before?
Paul's teacher. It's not the same person, is it?
No. Yeah. He was Paul's teacher. Paul was brought up at the feet of Gamaliel. Anybody ever have a philosophical discussion about Gamaliel's speech in Acts chapter 5 when the apostles are being detained and they're trying to figure out what to do with him? And Gamaliel says, let him alone. If it's of God, you can't stop it. If it's not of God, it'll come to its own end. Is that wise counsel or not? I think it's both for this reason. Yeah, it's wise counsel for what he's saying, but what if a movement, I'll say like a bunch that we have in America, what if it outlasts your lifetime? If that's your criteria for judging whether something is legitimate or not, well, I'm not sure if it's legitimate. Let's see if it dies. Well, what if you die before it does? And the tragedy of that speech to me is, hey, Gamaliel, what do you think? What do you think? And unfortunately, some people don't look at it that way. I think Gamaliel should have applied it to himself to see whether or not the things the apostles were saying was actually true. So it has, obviously, it's wise in the sense that he's actually right in the way he's assessing it, but as an individual, I'll be a little hungrier than that. You know, one of the things you got to remember about the gospel message is it's supposed to get your attention. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. You shall die in your sins. Where I go, if you die in your sins, where I go, you cannot come. This stuff's supposed to get your attention. Outer darkness, gnashing of teeth. You're supposed to, what are you guys talking about? One way or the other, let me solve this. But I'm not going to wait around to see if it's legitimate or not. So as an individual, it doesn't sound like very good advice to me. But anyways, Gamaliel. Yes, that is a different Gamaliel. What verse was that? I lost my place. 21? Thank you. His army was 32,200. Then shall come Benjamin. Verse 23, his army was numbered at 35,400. All who were numbered according to their armies of the forces with Ephraim 108,100, they shall be third to break camp. And then on the north side, and bringing up the rear, the standard of the forces of Dan. I believe Dan's standard was a eagle, I believe, but don't hold me to that. Standard of the forces of Dan shall be to the north side, according to the armies. And the leader of the children of Dan shall be Ahiezer, the son of Ammishaddai, and his army was numbered at 62,700. Those who camp next to him shall be the tribe of Asher. Verse 28. His army was numbered at 41,500. Then shall come Naphtali. Verse 30. His army was numbered at 53,400. And all who were numbered of the forces of Dan, 157,600. They shall break camp last with their standards. These are the ones who were numbered of the children of Israel by their fathers' houses. All who were numbered according to their armies of the forces were 603,550. There it is again. But the Levites were not numbered among the children of Israel, just as the Lord commanded Moses. Thus the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So they camped by their standard, and so they broke camp each by his family according to his father's houses. All right, chapter 3. Test question. Who are the three sons of Levi? Chapter 3 answers it. Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, Levi's sons. By the time we're done with this chapter, we will see which responsibilities the descendants of these three sons will have. But now we're going to turn to the ministry of the Levites, priests and the Levites. Chapter 3, verse 1. Now these are the records of Aaron and Moses. And the Lord spoke with Moses on Mount Sinai. And by the way, you guys are all writing furiously as far as three sons of Levi. Right in this chapter, we'll point them out. And these are the names of the son of Aaron: Nadab, the firstborn, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Anybody remembers what happened to Nadab and Abihu? They were destroyed for offering strange fire, which the Lord had not commanded them. God destroyed them right in front of Aaron. So we're down to Eleazar and Ithamar. And they are going to be given responsibility as well, as you can imagine. Verse 3, these are the names of the sons of Aaron, the anointed priest whom he consecrated to minister as priests. Nadab and Abihu had died before the Lord when they offered profane fire before the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai, and they had no children. So Eleazar and Ithamar ministered as priests under the oversight of Aaron their father. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, bring the tribe of Levi near, present them before Aaron, the priest, that they may serve him. And they shall attend to his needs, and the needs of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of meeting to do the work of the tabernacle. Also, they shall attend to all the furnishings of the tabernacle of meeting, and to do the needs of the children of Israel to do the work of the tabernacle. Stop right there just for a second. Just to say something very obvious and practical. Why is God dwelling in a tent? What was David's complaint? Man, I live in a paneled house, cedar house. God lives in a tent. That's not right. Well, why is God living in a tent right here? Yeah, because you're going to pick it up and you're going to move it. And again, if you're going to pick it up and you're going to move it, consider the furniture that's in this. Consider the wealth that's in this. And consider its purpose. Again, we better get organized. They had it down to a science, if you know what I mean. Verse 9. So the tabernacle will be the structure of choice until they're actually in the promised land. And now they're in the promised land, they have a more permanent place. Along comes the temple. And of course, the temple eventually is replaced by what? The church. You betcha. Verse 9. And you shall give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are given entirely to him from among the children of Israel. So you shall appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall attend to the priesthood. But the outsider who comes near shall be put to death. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Now, behold, I myself have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among the children of Israel. Therefore the Levites shall be mine, because all the firstborn are mine. On the day that I struck all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, I sanctified to myself all the firstborn in Israel, both man and beast. They shall be mine. I am the Lord. So when God established the Passover there in the book of Exodus, and it came out after the death of the firstborn, first thing he does is tell them that I own the firstborn. And what do we mean by the firstborn belong to God?
Set apart for God's service.
Exactly.
In First Samuel, Hannah had one Samuel. She led him to the Lord. She prayed for a child that was barren, but had a child. She led him to the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the stuff, a lot of similar stuff from everything we studied here.
Mm-hmm.
She took bulls to offer when they had to offer. When she finally brought him to the Lord, every week she brought a bull to be sacrificed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she gave Samuel, he's chapter 6 in Numbers here. We're going to look at the Nazirite vows. Samuel was one of those, who are the 3 Nazirites from birth.
Samson, Samuel,
John the Baptist. Yeah. But anyways, Nazirite vow, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. That's in chapter 6. But anyways, you know, just before you jump in, Joe, I don't want to change the subject. When we say the firstborn are dedicated to the service of God, now you could pay money. You did not have to serve God at the temple just because you were the firstborn. And we'll see that's what we're going to talk about, the redemption money here in a minute. Yes, Joe, what's your question?
Numbers.
No, we're only. Yeah, we are. I don't use it that much. I'm reading it one time just so you can say you read it and get the proportion of it. But the only number that I really want you to, if you were taking a class, test for a class, is the total number of fighting. And even then, you could round off as far as depending on if you're writing a doctoral thesis like Dave over there, you might want to put the exact number in there and let people know where you got it from. But I'm perfectly fine if you were to tell the guy next door to you over the coffee, you're having a study or a talk with him, and there was 600,000 Jews of fighting age. But for the purposes of this class, we're going to stick with that exact number. But that's the only one. All those other numbers were just to show you what's in the book as he divides it.
I think Samuel was a Levite.
Hmm?
Samuel was a Levite too. Samuel was
from
that tribe somehow. His father was from that. I think it does mention that from the tribe of
I haven't read it in a while. I'll have to go back and look.
I think so.
After forgetting last week that Daniel's from the tribe of Judah, I'm going to go back and look before I jump into that water.
Samuel was from that. His father was tribe.
But anyways, the ministry of the Levites. So the firstborn belong to mine, which are the Levites. Verse 13. On the day that I just read that. Verse 14. So now we're going to take a census of the Levites. Then the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, saying, Number the children of Levi. By their fathers' houses, their family, you shall number every male 1 month old and above. So Moses numbered them according to the word of the Lord as he was commanded. And here's your verse for you. I ask you, who are the sons of Levi? About chapter 3, verse 17. These were the sons of Levi by their names: Gershon, Kohath, Merari. And these are the names of the sons of Gershon by their families: Libni, Shimei, and these are the sons of Kohath by their families. Amram, Izahar, Hebron, and Uzziel. And I've got Amram highlighted. I believe that is Moses' father. Verse 20, and the sons of Merari by their families, Mali and Mushi. These are the families of the Levites of their father's house. So again, who are the sons of Levi? Gershon, Kohath, Merari. So now we're going to look at each individual family here, the sons of Gershon. Verse 21, from Gershon came the families of the Libnites, family of the Shemites. These were the families of the Gershonites. Those who were numbered according to the number of the males from 1 month old and above. Those who were numbered, there were 7,500. Families of the Gershonites were to camp behind the tabernacle westward. And the leader of the father's house of the Gershonites was Eliasaph, the son of Lael. Duties of the children of Gershon and the tabernacle of meeting included the tabernacle, the tent with its coverings, the screen for the door of the tabernacle of meeting, screen for the door of the court, the hangings of the court which are around the tabernacle, and the altar, all their cords according to all the work relating to them. So that is the official duty of the Gershonites, basically all the drapery kind of things. But obviously, we are moving God's tabernacle. These guys took things moved with precision, recognizing they were dealing with the holy things. Kohath had the privileged position. I am certain I'm going to want to know what his responsibilities were. And here's why, verse 27. From Kohath came the families of the Amramites, family of the Isharites, the family of the Hebronites, and the family of the Uzzielites. They were the families of the Kohathites. According to the number of all the males from 1 month old and above, there were 8,600, keeping charge of the sanctuary. Families of the children of Kohath were camped on the south side of the tabernacle, and the leader of the father's house of the families of the Kohathites was Elzaphan, son of Uzziel. And here you go. Their duty included the table, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the utensils of the sanctuary, with which they ministered, the screen, and all the works relating to them. Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, was to be chief over the leaders of the Levites with oversight of those who kept charge of the sanctuary. So who is it on a test that is moving the furniture, including the Ark of the Covenant? Kohathites, sons of Kohath, privileged position. And so God has given them a huge responsibility, and they got great respect for having that. The Merarites, if that's how you say that, Merari, these guys were the carpenters, if you will. You got to have a strong structure underneath this, and somebody's got to move it. Verse 33, from Merari came the families of the Mahalites, family of the Mushites. These were the families of Merari, those who were numbered according to the number of all the males from 1 month old and above, 6,200. Leaders of the father's house of the families of Merari were Zeriel, the son of Abihail. Those were to camp on the north side of the tabernacle. And the appointed duty of the children of Merari included the boards, tabernacles, its bars, its pillars, its sockets, its utensils, all the work relating to them, the pillars of the court all around with their sockets, their pegs, and their cords. And also, we keep track of them and take care of them. Anything breaks down. Like I said, these were known as carpenters because of the duties that they were assigned. Verse 38. Let's finish the chapter and take a break. Moreover, those who were to camp before the tabernacle on the east, before the tabernacle of meeting, were Moses, Aaron, and his sons. Notice how Moses, Aaron, and his sons are on the east. Once again, privileged position, keeping charge of the sanctuary to meet the needs of the children of Israel, but the outsider who came near was to be put to death. All who were numbered of the Levites, whom Moses and Aaron numbered at the commandment of the Lord by their families, all the males from 1 month old and above, 22,000. Then the Lord said to Moses, number all the firstborn males of the children of Israel from 1 month old and above, and take the number of their names, and you shall take the Levites for me, I am the Lord. Instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel and the livestock of the Levites, instead of all the firstborn among the livestock of the children of Israel. So Moses numbered all the firstborn among the children of Israel, as the Lord had commanded him. And all the firstborn, according to the number of names from 1 month old and above, of those who were numbered of them were 22,273. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the Levite instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, the livestock, the Levites instead of their livestock. The Levites shall be mine, I am the Lord. And I've got verse 46 highlighted. And for the redemption of the 273 of the firstborn of the children of Israel, who are more than the number of the Levites, you shall take 5 shekels for each individual. You shall take them in the currency of the shekel of the sanctuary, the shekel of 20 gerahs. What does that mean? Who are these 273? Let's stop and think about it logically. The Levites replaced the firstborn in Israel. There's 3 million people out here. Do you think the number of Levites and the number of firstborn in Israel is just going to happen to be the same? No, of course there's going to be a discrepancy. There are more firstborn than there are Levites, to the tune of 273. And I point this out because what did Jesus say about leaving the 99 and going after the one? Does God forget about anybody? No, there's an exact number here. There are 273 more firstborn, and God recognizes that. And so you're going to have to pay shekels for each individually for those 273 so that all firstborn are accounted for. Sometimes the Bible rounds off and it perplexes me. For instance, how old was Jesus when he began his ministry? About 30, says John. That always perplexed me. John, you're writing by the Holy Spirit. Let's just tell us how old he was. About 30. Sometimes the Bible rounds off and it gives 2 different numbers for the same event, that kind of thing. But notice this is pretty specific because with God, all firstborn are accountable. He doesn't forget anyone. Verse 48, let's finish the chapter and take a break. And you shall give money with which the excess number of them is redeemed to Aaron and his sons. So Moses took the redemption money from those who were over and above those who were redeemed by the Levites. From the firstborn of the children of Israel, took the money, 1,365 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. And Moses gave the redemption money to Aaron and his sons, according to the word of the Lord, as the Lord had commanded. All right, let's take a break. A lot of numbers there. You don't need to keep track of them as much as just notice the organization of God. The big number is 603,550 fighting men. There's the breakdown around the camp of Israel. Ministry of Kohath is in chapter 4. Let's take a break. Come back at 7:30.
All right.
Try that again. Believe it or not, really shaking whatever caused me to take a few weeks back off. My wife still has it too. It's pretty amazing how long it's hung on. I don't feel too bad, but it won't seem to go anyway. All right, chapter 4. Now notice we well, make that point later. Chapter 4, the ministry of Kohath. Now he's going to describe a little bit about the ministry of Kohath. Now remember, test question, what responsibilities does Kohath have? The furniture, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, the other two are important, don't get me wrong, but this is, the centerpiece. That's like Acts 20 and verse 7. The disciples came together on the first day of the week to break bread. Obviously, all the acts of worship are important, but that verse is stressing the importance of the Lord's Supper. Without the Lord's sacrifice and our memorial, we would be undone. So I don't have any problem saying that's the central feature of our worship. Not that all the acts of worship aren't important, but that to me is the primary feature. And Kohath's kind of the same way. They're all brothers, and they're all transporting all the elements of the tabernacle, but they're transporting the holy things. That's pretty special.
Interesting. We'll get to that one minute. They transport the ark, and the ox cart stumbles and reach their hands.
Going right there, buddy. We're getting right there. Chapter 4. Carl's figured out my game here. He knows where I'm headed. And I'll show you why here in a minute. Chapter 4, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, take a census of the sons of Kohath from among children of Levi by their families, by their father's house, from 30 years old and above, even to 50 years old. All who enter the service to do the work of the tabernacle of meeting. This is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of meeting relating to the most holy things. So this census involves men who are 30 to 50 of age to perform these functions. I haven't read Ezekiel in a while either. Wasn't Ezekiel 30 when he began? Or was it 25? It's been a while since I read it. But again, we noticed, when did Jesus begin his ministry? Yeah, he's about 30 years old. Notice the priesthood begins about the age of, or begins at the age of 30, or service, I should say, not the priesthood. Forgive me for that, but the starting at 30 years old. A little bit later on, they'll drop down to 25 for some reason I can't explain. But right here, it's 30 years old, above to 50. Verse 4, this is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of meeting relating to the most holy things. When the camp prepares to journey, Aaron and his son shall come, and they shall take down the covering veil and cover the ark of the testimony with it. How valuable is that, guys? Ark of the covenant, covered by the veil that separates the holy place from the most holy place before Jesus will rend it asunder. Verse 6, and they shall put a covering of badger skins on it. Scholars aren't agreed that that's necessarily badger skins. There are some other choices out there, but anyways, they covered the veil that's covering the ark. Put a covering of badger skins, spread over that a cloth entirely of blue, and they shall insert its poles. Verse 7, same thing with the table of showbread, blue cloth covered by badger skins in verse 8. And they insert its poles. Verse 9, and they shall take the blue cloth again for the lampstand of the light, with its lamps, its wick, trimmers, trays, all of its vessels with which they service it. Then they shall put it with its utensils and a covering of badger skins, put it on a golden beam over the golden altar. They shall spread the blue cloth, cover it with a covering of badger skins, and insert its poles. So those are the pieces of furniture in the most holy place. Then they shall take the utensils, verse 12, of service with which they minister to the sanctuary, put them in blue cloth, Cover them with a covering of badger skins and put them on a carrying beam. They shall take away the ashes from the altar, spread a purple cloth over it. They shall put on it the implements with which they minister there, fire pans, forks, shovels, basins, all the utensils of the altar. Shall spread it on a covering of badger skins and insert its poles. My guess is those were waterproof, so it caught in the rain probably would keep them dry. I'm not sure about that. But verse 15, when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary with all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is set to go, then the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them. And Carl, here you go. But they shall not touch any holy thing, lest they die. These are the things of the tabernacle of meeting with which the sons of Kohath are to carry. The appointed duty of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, is the oil for the light, sweet incense, the daily grain offering, the anointing oil, the oversight of the tabernacle, of all that is in it, with the sanctuary and its furnishings. Once again, who's Eleazar? The son of Aaron. He's going to be the high priest when Aaron dies. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, do not cut off the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among the Levites, but do this in regard to them, that they may live, not die, when they approach the most holy things. Aaron and his son shall go in and appoint each of them to his service and his task. But they shall not go in to watch while the holy things are being covered, lest they die. Verse 15, as Carl was alluding to, look at verse 15 again, the last half of that verse. But they shall not touch any holy thing lest they die. These are the things in the tabernacle of meeting. The sons of Kohath are to carry. They weren't supposed to touch anything, not just the Ark of the Covenant, but they weren't supposed to touch the furniture at all. So they had to be very precise in carrying the Ark of the Covenant and all the other furniture. You grab it by the staves. Look at First Chronicles chapter 13, if you will. Don't touch it unless you die. Question, is sincerity enough?
So,
Yeah. Romans 10, what is it, verse 1 or 2? Or maybe 3. That Paul's observation about Israel is they have a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. Zeal will take you a long way, though. I think it's amazing that Christ told Ananias that Saul of Tarsus was a chosen vessel. He's out killing Christians. That's one thing you can say about Saul of Tarsus. What he believed deeply and passionately, and it affected his behavior. When Jesus challenged the church at Laodicea, what was their sin? Revelation chapter 3. Lukewarm, neither cold nor hot. And I'll spew you out of my mouth. Point being, passion is pretty important, but it has to be coupled with knowledge. David, a good king? Man after God's own heart. Now we know how far he fell, but he did repent, and he never lost faith in the Lord. Was faithful to him all his days. But certainly a man that we would say is sincere in his religion and in his service to God. Well, in First Chronicles chapter 13, the Ark of the Covenant is not in the tabernacle. It's been taken in battle by the Philistines and hasn't made it back to the tabernacle yet. David comes to the throne, and very early on, he says that's not right. How can you not have the Ark of the Covenant in the most holy place where it belongs? So he wants to do something about that. Verse 6 of chapter 13. Then David and all Israel went up to Baalah, to Kirjath-jearim, which belonged to Judah, to bring up from there the ark of the God of the Lord who dwells between the cherubim, where his name is proclaimed. So they carried the ark of God on a new cart from the house of Aminadab, and Uzzah and Ahio drove the cart. And in verse 7, I've got new cart highlighted. You might want to take a stab at why that jumps out at me. And do you realize what it's saying? What's David saying here? He's saying, if you bring me a cart that you used in the field, you've used it for sacred work. That's an abomination. I cannot possibly put the Ark of the Covenant on a cart that's been used for secular work. I'm more righteous than that, more sincere than that in my approach to God. It's got to be a new cart. Verse 8. Then David and all Israel played music before God with their might, singing on harps, stringed instruments, tambourines, cymbals with trumpets. And when they came to Chidon's threshing floor, Uzzah put his hand out to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. Then the anger of the Lord was aroused against Uzzah, and he struck him, because he put his hand to the ark, and he died there before God. What do you know? I've got a reference to Numbers 4:15 right next to that passage. Why did Uzzah die? Touch the ark. You don't touch the ark.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, in that movie, the Ten Commandments, they gave a display of that.
It's been so long since I've seen it, I don't remember it scene by scene, but if they did.
It was going to fall the way they showed it was going to fall. He put his hands.
Yeah, it's probably a rendition of this. But here's what I really want you to notice why I asked the question about is sincerity enough? Look at verse 11. This strikes me too. And David became angry because of the Lord's outbreak against Uzzah. Therefore, that place is called Perez Uzzah to this day. We got the word angry highlighted. David was angry. Why was he angry?
Since his death.
But remember the point I'm driving is sincerity enough. Why is David angry? Because that's how sincere people react when you challenge them. If a person is sincere, they think you're just supposed to look the other way on whatever it is they do. Because they're being sincere. Well, why would you challenge me? Why would you get in my face? People react defensively when you challenge them, when they are operating out of sincerity but not any knowledge. And that's one of the hurdles that we have to get over in the world. I had a buddy, doesn't preach anymore, but he's one of the better preachers I ever knew. He was one of my teachers as well. But he said something about the church that always made me chuckle because it's true. So do you ever notice the church is always answering questions nobody's asking? Everybody thinks they're fine until they run into us and we start asking them questions that, things they had never thought of before that we're suddenly making them think of. And not only are we making them think of it, but we're trying to impress to them that it's pretty important that you do think of it, and you might want to react to this new information. Well, guess what? That doesn't go down very well with people who are very sincere, but very comfortable in their lack of knowledge. Of course, Jesus said, in vain do they worship me, teaching as commandments the doctrines of men. But I also notice verse 12. David was afraid of God that day, saying, how can I bring the ark of God to me? I've got the word afraid highlighted in that passage. Why? Because David is a man after God's own heart. What's his initial reaction when Uzzah struck dead? Anger. But when cooler heads prevail, guess what David realizes? Well, as angry as I might have been at what happened, God is still God, and I need to rethink what I'm doing because I haven't done it right. By the way, we're not there yet, but I'll give you a spoiler alert. What was one of the things the king In Deuteronomy 17, when Moses said, when you come into the land that I am giving you and you set a king over you, what is one of the responsibilities that God immediately in Deuteronomy 17 gave him? He said, you may need to make a copy of this law and you need to read it all the days of your life. Guess what David did? He certainly wasn't consulting the law of Moses when he decided to transport this ark. Now the Bible goes in a different direction right here, but before we leave First Chronicles and get back to Numbers, look at chapter 15 where he picks up the task of getting the ark back to the tabernacle. Verse 11, we'll start. David called for Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, and for the Levites, for Uriah, Asaiah, Joel, Shemaiah, Eliel, Aminadab. Then he said to them, you are the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites. Sanctify you yourselves, you and your brother, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel to the place I have prepared for it. And here's your key verse. For because you did not do it the first time, the Lord our God broke out against us. Look at this phrase. Because we did not consult him about the proper order. Okay, David might have started out angry, but he ended up afraid of God, and he ended up admitting, that's on me. I should have consulted the law of Moses on how you properly transport the ark. You never touch the ark. You move it with the staves that should be in the rings so that 4 men can carry it without actually touching it. Carl, you can go back to Numbers now.
I have a sidebar about Chronicles on 1 Samuel chapter 6 when the Philistines had the ark. They actually put it on a new cart too to send it back. And offer a trade, they put it on a new cart to send it back because they recognize we didn't take care of this right here.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's like, yeah, we thought we wanted this thing, but let's get rid of this before we all die.
You don't want this. Give them what you asked for, what you want.
Absolutely. But anyways, there's a perfect example of not consulting the proper order. So why do we always go back to basics? And why is it good for New Testament Christians to study this stuff, to lay the foundation as we build our way towards the New Testament? But one of the things that's for certain, there's an order to God's worship. There's an order to be followed. And so we need to abide by the pattern that God had revealed to us.
So don't follow the narrow way.
Narrow way. All kinds of good passages, but yeah. Have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, done many mighty wonders in your name? And I will say to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. By the way, it's and maybe I'll drag that sermon up next few weeks. I got a sermon called On the Bubble. It's called On the Bubble. March Madness. Anybody that's a sports fan knows in March Madness, the last week before they pick the tournament, which starts tomorrow, I believe, teams that are, we're not sure if they're going to make it or not, they call them on the bubble. When I was a kid, a young man, I should say, I remember a day when there were only 32 teams that were let into the NCAA tournament. You know why they expanded it to 64? Because teams 33, 34, and 35 were screaming, we're just as good as the 32 you let in there. It's not fair. And so the NCAA, recognizing that, but also recognizing there's more money to be made, we just double the tournament, double the profits. But anyway, that was part of the excuse. So they let 64 teams in. Guess what happened? 65, 66, 67 said, we're just as good as those guys. Why can't we play? It's not fair. If you let 128 in, what's going to happen? Same thing. When Jesus said, depart from me, I never knew you. These people have been serving the Lord. At least in their minds, they were sincere, they were wrong, but they've been serving the Lord. They're genuinely surprised They're calling on the Lord. They know who the Lord is. They're prophesying in his name, doing mighty works in his name. Depart from me, for I never knew you. Only those who do the will of my Father. What's on the bubble got anything to do with it? God's going to be true to his word. Imagine the line, let's just say right here. This is the line between the lost and the saved. Imagine if these are the, sorry guys, but imagine if these are the saved and these are the lost. I'm standing right here, first in line of the lost. Lord, you can't. Lord, have mercy on me. The person in front of me is saved. This can't be real. And the Lord looks at me with pity and says, okay, come on in, Mike. Let's see if this is going to say. Same principle. No matter how many people over the line that God lets in, there will always be somebody standing right there claiming, how could you let him in and not let me in? I'm the bubble. No matter how big the NCAA expands its tournament, somebody will be whining that they're as good as the teams that are in the tournament. I think it's probably wiser if we just take the Lord at his word, and only those who do the Father's will be recognized. But anyways, don't touch the furniture of the tabernacle. Chapter 4, verse 21, the ministry of Gershon. Once again, verse 23, 30 years old and above, or 30 years old till 50, I should say, from 30 years old till 50. What is Gershon's responsibilities? Verse 25. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle of meeting with its coverings of badger skins that is on it, the screen for the door of the tabernacle. So that's what they are in charge of. Drop down to verse 28. This is the service of the families of Gershon in the tabernacle of meeting, and their duties shall be under the hand of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. Remember, Eliezer is overseeing the Kohath. So he's overseeing the moving of the furniture. Well, Eliezer's brother, Ithamar, oversees the work of Merari as well as the work of Gershon. Actually, I'm sorry, I was looking at the word Merari. We just read about Gershon. He's going to oversee both Gershon and Merari, but Merari starts in verse 29. As for the sons of Merari, you shall number them by their families in their father's house, 30 years old above to 50. What's their responsibility? Verse 31. They must carry all the service for the tabernacle of meeting, its boards, tabernacles, bars, pillars, sockets, pegs, cords, and once again, all of it is done under the oversight of Ithamar. So he's got both Gershon and Merari to look after, whereas Eliezer is looking after Kohath, but he's got other responsibilities too, the oil and the incense and etc. But I wrote carpenters down next to verse 29 because these men were handy with tools. So anyways, that is who carries what when it comes time to move the tabernacle. Verse 34. And Moses and Aaron, the leaders of the congregation, numbered the sons of Kohathites of the Kohathites by their families, by their father's house, 30 years old above to 50. And what's the number? Verse 36, 2,750. Now remember, the last census of the Levites was 1 month old and above. These are the ones for service. These are the ones who were numbered, verse 37, the families of the Kohathites. Verse 38, and those who were numbered of the sons of Gershon, from 30 years old to 50. Verse 40, those who were numbered of their families by their father's house was 2,630. Verse 42, those of the families of Merari, 30 years old to 50. Verse 44, 3,200. Verse 45, these are the ones who were numbered with families of the sons of Merari, whom Moses and Aaron numbered according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. All who were numbered of the Levites, whom Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel numbered by their families, by their father's house, 30 years old, above even to 50 years old. Everyone who came to do the work of service and the work of bearing burdens in the tabernacle of meeting. Those who were numbered were 8,580. According to the commandment of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, each according to his service and according to his task. Thus they were numbered by him as the Lord commanded. So everybody's got a job, and they are ready to move the tabernacle in an organized, systematic fashion. Now, what's one of the problems you have when people are living on top of each other? What's the first thing that happened when COVID hit? Dive under the couch. Don't let anyone in. Got to separate them. And you've got people living in close quarters, and somebody's got a communicable or contagious illness, like, say, leprosy. Now, you might recall in the book of Leviticus, Leviticus 13 and 14 gives us all the details about how the priests would spot leprosy and what they would do. Obviously, remove them from the camp, but then how they could be reinstated to the camp if and when they ever got better. But anyways, here we have some more information about how to deal with these unclean people. Verse 1, chapter 5. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, command the children of Israel that they put out the camp every leper, everyone who has a discharge, and whoever becomes defiled by a dead body. You shall put both male, female, you shall put them outside the camp, and they may not defile their camps in the midst of which I dwell. And the children of Israel did so and put them outside the camp, as the Lord spoke to Moses. So the children of Israel did. Obviously, in any time, but particularly in a camping situation like this, where people are shoulder to shoulder, we got to remove them. And we're going to have a real problem on our hands. Verse 5. By the way, when Israelite had leprosy, what do you have to do? Somebody approached him. Unclean, unclean. What a hideous way to have to live. But anyways, obviously lepers cannot be living in the camp. And by the way, when they removed the lepers and those with the discharge outside the camp, why did the Jew do it? If you asked him, hey, why are you making those people leave? What's the point? Why? Because thus says the Lord. Try and do what the Lord says. They had no idea how light years ahead of cleanliness they were in the times that they lived in. They're living a much cleaner lifestyle than the nations around them, but they're not doing it for the same reason educated people do it. They're doing it because thus says the Lord. Why do you remove the lepers outside the camp? Thus says the Lord. Verse 5. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when the speak to the children of Israel, when a man or a woman commits any sin that men commit in unfaithfulness against the Lord, that person is guilty, then he shall confess the sin which he has done. He shall make restitution for his trespass in full value plus 1/5 of it, and give it to the one he has wronged. If the man has no kinsman to whom restitution may be made for the wrong, the restitution for the wrong must go to the Lord, to the priest, in addition to the ram of the atonement with which atonement is made for him. Every offering of all the holy things of the children of Israel which they bring to the priest shall be his. Every offering is also a heave offering, by the way. And every man's holy things shall be his. Whatever any man gives to the priest shall be his. So if there's no kinsman to make restitution to, you got to give it to the priest. Why is that? It's still got to be dealt with. What if you wrong somebody financially and they die before you can do anything about it? But you legitimately, you're not rejoicing because they died and, wee, I got out of that. No, actually, I'm horrified that I can't pay him back. If I was looking at this passage, I might be tempted to think about giving it to the Lord if I couldn't make it right with somebody that I had wronged. But anyways, just a thought. But certainly Israel, if there's no kinsman to give it to, you're going to have to give it to God because it has to be accounted for. Just can't let sin go unchallenged. Chapter 5, verse 11. Interesting and distasteful story. And you'll see what I mean if you don't know. Verse 11. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, if any man's wife goes astray and behaves unfaithfully towards him, and a man lies with her carnally, and it is hidden from the eyes of her husband, and it is concealed that she has defiled herself, and there was no witness against her, nor was she caught, if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, I've got spirit of jealousy highlighted, by the way, and he becomes jealous of his wife, who has defiled herself, if the spirit of jealousy comes upon him, becomes jealous of his wife, although she has not defiled herself, then the man shall bring his wife to the priest. He shall bring the offering required for her, 1/10 of an ephah of barley meal. He shall pour no oil on it, and put no frankincense on it. Why do you suppose that is? There's nothing to be celebrated here, because it's a grain offering of jealousy, an offering for remembering, for bringing iniquity to remembrance. And the priest shall bring her near, and shall set her before the Lord. The priest shall take the holy water in an earthen vessel, take some of the dust that's on the floor of the tabernacle, and put it into the water. And the priest shall stand the woman. By the way, some scholars see a whole lot of significance in some of this. Why an earthen vessel, as opposed to a metal one or something else? Well, I was reading a scholar, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he was throwing out ideas. I didn't completely like his ideas, but I liked what he was doing. I wasn't sure I was seeing it the same way he is. But earthen vessel, maybe it's because this kind of behavior is earthy, worldly. Take some of the dust from the ground, probably because we are made of dust, and this is very worldly behavior. Kind of behavior that will kill you in the end. The wages of sin is death. Anyways, that's just speculation. Verse 18. Then the priest shall stand the woman before the Lord, uncover the woman's head, put the offering for remembering in her hands, which is the grain offering of jealousy. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that brings a curse. The priest shall put her under oath and say to the woman, if no man is lain with you, and if you have not gone astray to uncleanness while under your husband's authority, be free from this bitter water that brings a curse. But if you've gone astray while under your husband's authority, and if you have defiled yourself, and some man other than your husband has lain with you, then the priest shall put the woman under the oath of the curse. And he shall say to the woman, the Lord make you a curse with an oath among your people. And when the Lord makes your thigh rot and your belly swell, and may this water that causes the curse to go into your stomach and make your belly swell and your thigh rot, then the woman shall say, Amen, so be it. Then the priest shall write these curses in a book. Hang on a second, I was trying to highlight something there. Then the priest shall write these curses in a book, and he shall scrape them off into the bitter water. He shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings the curse, and the water that brings the curse shall enter her to become bitter. And the priest shall take the grain offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, shall wave it before the Lord, and bring it to the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering as its memorial portion, burn it on the altar. Afterwards, make the woman drink the water. When he has made her drink the water, then it shall be, she has defiled herself and behaved unfaithfully towards her husband. The water that brings a curse will enter her and become bitter. Belly will become a curse among and the woman will become a curse among her people. But if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be free and may conceive children. This is the law of jealousy, when a wife, while under her husband's authority, goes astray and defiles herself, or when the spirit of jealousy comes upon a man and he becomes jealous of his wife. Then he shall stand the woman before the Lord, and the priest shall execute this law upon her. Then the man shall be free from his iniquity, but that woman shall bear her guilt. Fascinating story, isn't it? Kind of grotesque, but still. You know, read about that every day, do you? Glad we're in the New Testament. Couple of things that jump out at me at this. Number one, some women are innocent, but man still has a spirit of jealousy. Why? Sometimes your behavior just isn't trustworthy. Can't ever find you when I'm looking for. I mean, usually when somebody's got a spirit of jealousy, now there are some people in this world, of course, that are so possessive. If you're out of their sight, 15 minutes late, they already think something's up. There are those kind of people, but there's also usually some legitimate reasons why I might have a spirit of jealousy. Can't account for you all the time. You say you were at Shirley's house. I talked to Shirley. She said she didn't see you. There's usually reasons for a spirit of jealousy. Even if you're innocent, that kind of thing destroys a marriage. There's nothing more aggravating than to be suspected of something when you're innocent. That's hard to have a peaceful home when something like that's going on, even if you're innocent.
Also come by self-insecurities as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons for it, but one of them, the one I'm trying to point out, because I saw a living example of it, and I'll give it to you. You know, leave the names and places out of it, but I saw this one with my own eyes. Small church, well, no, it was a pretty decent-sized church for a small town, but man in the town had one of the local businesses. His name's on Main Street, and single woman. He was married with children. Single woman in the congregation and him became friends. Next thing you know, she's working at that establishment. And the people that worked there knew, and, you know, I haven't seen anything, but I'm telling you, I know what's going on. Well, I knew the preacher of that congregation. I used to sit in his office and talk to him a lot. I bet every time I went in there while this was happening, he would get a phone call. Guess he was getting a phone call from the wife of the man. These two claimed that they weren't doing anything, they were just friends. Well, okay, wait a minute. I'll take you, actually I know it's not true, but let's just take you at your word right now. If you were in that situation, you got a woman 20 years younger than you and everybody suspects that this is pretty untoward, even though you're not doing anything, wouldn't you change your behavior? If this is really your friend, wouldn't you be able to go to your friend and say, hey, look, we have a nice friendship here, but the way we've been behaving ourselves is causing great distress to my wife. This can't go on. You can't have a wife thinking every time we get together there's something going on. We're going to have to change our behavior. Well, guess what? That's the one thing they didn't do. After it became a mess, he's still going over to her house, when no one else is around, still behaving like they're just, claiming they're just friends. Every time I sat in a preacher friend's office, his wife's calling to talk about this, driving her insane. Spirit of jealousy. You're not going to have a good marriage if you've got the spirit of jealousy going on in here. So even when they're innocent, man, there's got to be trust. If you don't have trust in your marriage, your foundation isn't going to last through much. But I would think that if I was conducting myself in such a way that my wife wasn't sure about me, that I might want to change my ways. But how about the guilty party? And of course, the first thing that strikes me is, now, how often did that happen? How often do you think it happened? Not very often at all. I don't even know of an incident. And do you know why? If you were a guilty woman, would you sign up for that oath? No, I think she would confess it. That's a pretty good threat right there. And oh, by the way, once again, fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Anybody want to sign up for that? How many guilty women, I should say, does Israel got to produce before the rest of Israel women realize, I don't want that happening? So anyways, it's a pretty good deterrent for unfaithful behavior. He didn't name it, but one scholar said that this practice was ended by 40 years before the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. So around the time of Jeremiah, that practice was no longer even known. But anyways, obviously this didn't happen very often because, once again, if you are a woman who is guilty, I'm not sure what you would be thinking to go through with this, unless you just don't believe it's going to happen. But obviously, by the choice of plague that broke out on, I think that plague was what you might call appropriate for the sin that we're talking about. But anyways, spirit of jealousy, it has to be dealt with, because no marriage can survive for long without trust. It's a foundation issue. Got to be able to believe in each other. Let's do chapter 6 and then we'll call it a night. Chapter 6, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when either a man or a woman," almost sounds like Hannah here. Not that she took the vow, but she certainly served God day and night. "Consecrates an offering to take a vow of the Nazirite to separate himself to the Lord. He shall separate himself from wine, similar drink. He shall drink neither vinegar made from wine, vinegar made from similar drink. Neither shall he drink any grape juice, nor eat any fresh grapes or raisins. Fruit of the vine is out." Verse 4. "All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, from seed to skin. All the days of the vow of his separation no razor shall come upon his head, until the days are fulfilled, for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall be holy, and he shall let the locks of his hair, then he shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow. All the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. He shall not make himself unclean even for his father or his mother, or his brother or sister when they die, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation shall be holy to the Lord." So if I asked you on a test, what are the rules of a Nazirite vow? What can't you do? No fruit of the vine. Well, you can just say, just say wine, actually. Well, no, say fruit of the vine, because even the grape is outlawed. So, but I mean, if you want to put all that down, that's fine. But no fruit of the vine. But it. Well, and it has the same effect. Yeah. Fermented product. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they mean by vinegar. I'm sure it's not what we drink. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly something they drank. But anyways, you get it. Anyways, I would accept fruit of the vine. But yes, vinegar is included. Can't touch a dead body. And what about your hair? Lifelong vow. Wonder what John the Baptist's hair really did look like. Lifelong Nazirite vow. Of course, it's possible, but this could have happened as well, too. Verse 6. No, verse 9. And if anyone dies very suddenly beside him, and he defiles his consecrated head, then he shall shave his head. On the day of his cleansing, on the 7th day he shall shave it. And on the 8th day he shall bring 2 turtle doves, and 2 young pigeons to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And the priest shall offer the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. How could accidentally touching a dead body cause a sin offering?
I think of Samson killed left and right. They were falling left and right when he went on his rampage. And he not touched somebody that failed.
When did he touch somebody that was clean? I know what you're saying. But my point is, why you have to offer a sin offering in an accident like this? And I think the answer is because sin is a reality. What causes death? Wages of sin is death. So even in an accidental situation, you're still staring death or sin in the face, if you will. So the priest, verse 11, offer one as a sin offering, the other as a burnt offering, make atonement for him, because he sinned by reason of the dead body, and he shall sanctify his head same day. Consecrate to the Lord the days of his separation, bring a male lamb in the first year for trespass offering. Former days shall be lost because of his separation. The former days shall be lost because of his separation was defiled. What does that mean? Now remember, we think of John the Baptist, we think of Samson, and we think of Samuel as Nazirites, but they were lifelong Nazirites. You didn't have to be a lifelong Nazirite, but whatever vow, whatever little time period you vowed, you had to be a Nazirite through that time period. So, not sure how long vow would it be individual in length, but what he's saying is, let's just say you vowed for the next year. You get to 11 months and you accidentally touch a dead body. What does that mean? You get to start over. So you better be real careful about not violating your Nazirite vow. Verse. Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus have a Nazirite vow because he was from Nazareth. One of the scholars I was reading for this makes a joke about that, how many people confuse Nazarene, which is a town, with the Nazirite vow. 2 different Hebrew words completely, but because they are so close, people do confuse them. Verse 13, this law of the Nazirite, when his days of separation are fulfilled, he shall be brought to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Yeah, I'm not going to read the details of that. I'd rather do... Yeah, anyways, I'm not going to read that at 8:17 just to read it. Nazirite vow, the 3 things I want you to know is what couldn't they do? Fruit of the vine as well as vinegar, as Carl has correctly pointed out, but fruit of the vine I will accept. Fruit of the vine, can't touch a dead body, even your mother, father, brother, sister. And you leave your hair grow the entire length of the vow. Reason why I did want to cut off before we did that was look at Acts 21 as we go home. Give me a second here. Acts 21. Where's it at? Yeah, there it is. Look at verse. I don't want to read it all, but it starts in verse 17. And when we had come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. When he had greeted them, he told in detail those things which God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. I guess I'm going to have to read it. And when they heard it, they glorified the Lord, and they said to him, "You are the brother. You see, brother, how many myriads of Jews there are who have believed and are zealous for the law." By the way, speaking of Messianic Jews. "But they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, and that they ought not circumcise their children, nor to walk according to the customs." Now, of course, Paul did not teach that exactly as they laid out. But anyway, verse 22. "What then? The assembly must certainly meet, for they will hear that you have come. Therefore, do what we tell you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be purified with them, and pay their expenses, so that they may shave their heads, and that all may know that those things which they were informed concerning you are nothing, that you yourself also walk orderly and keep the law. But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should observe no such thing, except that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, from blood, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality." And here's your key verse. "Then Paul took them in the next day, having been purified with them, entered the temple to announce the expiration of the days of purification, at which time an offering should be made for each of them." Anybody know what great philosophical debate takes place over this story? The question is asked, did Paul sin when he did this? Nazirite vow, excuse me. How's it end? You offer your sacrifices. Sin offering, a burnt offering, trespass offering. Wasn't all that nailed to the cross? Well, if all that's nailed to the cross, why is Paul in the temple offering up these sacrifices? Some brethren think it's kind of the equivalent of maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but the question that they're pondering is, or the question to be pondered is, when Paul said, "I want to be all things to all people," where's the line? Can he still be offering sacrifices? Jesus, once for all, offered the sacrifice, and therefore a Christian knows that even though they are offering sacrifices at the temple still, that those sacrifices have been nailed to the cross, that in reality, Judaism is over and the sacrifice of Jesus suffices. Why is Paul offering these sacrifices? And did he sin when he did it? I tend to believe he didn't, even though I don't know the answer for positive. Scholars are on both sides of the issue, and whoever you talk to just might give you a different answer than I just gave you. But I tend to think he didn't for this reason. Look at chapter 24. This isn't the only reason, but look at chapter 24, Acts 24. Paul's been arrested for going into the temple. The Jews have suspected him of taking Gentiles into the court of Israelites, which is a sin punishable by death. Now, Paul didn't actually do that, but that's what the Jews are charging him with. The Jews are charging him with that, and so Paul is giving his defense. And he says this in verse 17. "Now, after many years, I came to bring alms and offerings to my nation, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with a multitude nor with a tumult. They ought to have been before you to object if they had anything against me." You know why verse 18 gets my attention? If Paul had sinned when he offered those sacrifices with the brethren or the Jews that had taken the Nazirite vow, why is he defending that behavior in Acts chapter 24? Chapter 24, he talks about what he just did and acts like it was the right thing to do. There's not a hint of, in Paul's actions, he's not confronted by the church. If you would think that the church, if they thought Paul had sinned in offering that, would have challenged him, asked him to repent, commanded him to repent. Church is silent on it. They never say anything to him, and Paul uses it as a defense. So if I'm correct, and I'm not saying I necessarily am, but if I am correct, that Paul didn't do anything wrong, what's that tell us? It tells us within reason, when Paul said, I become all things to all people, that I might win some. We have to be open-minded to what we might have to do and get out of our comfort zone a little bit. Would you go to a confirmation, even though you're not Catholic? You got a Catholic friend, hey, I'm confirming my boy this week. I want you to come, be my honored guest. Would you go? I would and did. And by the way, one of the reasons was what I just asked Dave for. I just kind of wanted to see the whole thing in action. I'd never seen a confirmation before. But if somebody sees me walking out of the Catholic Church, don't get the idea that I'm here for any other reason than that. But the point is, we love these people and we're trying to convert them. So even though we do not believe what they are saying about Catholicism and confirmation, even though we do not believe that, I'm going to support you as much as I possibly can to keep that door open. And so I do not believe that Paul sinned. I think he did as far as he could. And the way I look at the sacrifices is, if I'm right, I guess the way you would look at those sacrifices is they're meaningless. Jews may not recognize that they're meaningless. But if you're offering sacrifices after Christ's ultimate sacrifice, you really do not understand Christ's ultimate sacrifice. But anyways, that's the philosophical debate over the Nazirite vow there in Acts chapter 21. And like I said, I can line you up the scholars who disagree and say, no, Paul actually sinned, but I do not believe he actually did. Anyway, we'll pick it up in chapter 7 of Numbers next week. Thank you, online crowd. Appreciate it. Anyways, it's been an honor to be with you. Dave, as long as you're here, how about closing us out in prayer?